The Falcon and the Winter Soldier is an interesting show to discuss, because in trying to fulfill the now openly displayed mission statement of Marvel Entertainment, that being to provide escapism, and still being a very timely and modern piece released close to a year after widespread BLM protests, it accidentally ends up turning into something quite bizarre in what it is actually trying to convey to its viewer, and something that I think will be very fun to talk about. So, controversial opinion right off the bat. As much as I want to believe angry leftists on Twitter, I don't really see how Marvel movies and TV shows are military or American patriotic propaganda. Like, out of the million pieces of Marvel media out there, maybe like 2 movies, that being Captain Marvel, which has a couple of scenes going, yay, women in fighter jets are cool, and Captain America, which is about, fighting Nazis, which is arguably the only undeniable good America has ever done. All other examples consistently portray American military and politicians as corrupt, power-hungry, dangerous, and irrational. And sure, the argument can be made that this type of propaganda is especially malicious because it implies the problem with institutions like the police is certain malignant individuals and not the system as a whole, but seriously? No. Like, really? Why would anyone ever assume that to be the case? If 99% of the people portrayed holding these positions are portrayed as shady and untrustworthy, isn't the only logical conclusion to assume in this case that the system that elects these people and puts them in these positions in the first place is inherently flawed? And it's not like this is done in a subtle way either. Even at the beginning of the MCU, the first couple of movies portray American politicians and the military complex as a constant force of evil. For example, trying to acquire the Iron Man tech purely to weaponize it against fabricated external threats. The first Iron Man movie, the first movie in the MCU, is literally about how America fabricates its own enemies to bomb like a machine. And hell, even the paramilitary organization S.H.I.E.L.D. is, at least in the movies, portrayed as a shady, emotionally manipulative and untrustworthy pile of secrets and spies that mentally scarred the Avengers, who only reluctantly work together and with it. After all that, y'all are still just going to throw a blanket over the whole entire topic and just say that all of it is nothing more than propaganda? And I'll even give you the point that especially early costume designs for Marvel heroes have been highly militaristic, definitely coding them very simply as military, therefore good. And this is even continued in the Falcon and Winter Soldier. Speaking of, this video will likely be much shorter, not only because Falcon and the Winter Soldier very much feels like a shorter show than WandaVision, but also because I, as an Italian living in Germany, don't really have access to props befitting of a video on American culture and politics. Except for this American-style ice cream. God, this whole brand of American-style snacks and treats is really damn delicious. And cheap too. Damn. Nobody does it like the Americans. Wait, was that propaganda? The Falcon and the Winter Soldier is a 6-episode Disney Plus original show, with episodes spanning around 45 minutes each. The plot mainly revolves around Sam Wilson, the Falcon, slowly accepting the role as the new Captain America, appointed to him by the late Steve Rogers at the end of Endgame, as well as the Winter Soldier finally coming to terms with what he has done under mind control and trying to find happiness and meaning in his life once more. By the synopsis already, we can tell that the show, by its very inception, isn't really based around the big plot or event, for example like WandaVision. It more or less is about the growth of the characters themselves. However, at the same time, it is trying to be a highly political tale about nationalism and a realistic dissection of what it would mean for a black man to become a symbol like Captain America in the modern world. And again, just like I mentioned in the introduction, it's exactly this chaos that starts to fill the show with cracks. Now, this doesn't mean that it is outright bad. In fact, I really like the 2 villains because they represent the central struggle of the characters perfectly. The Flag Smashers are a worldwide group of anti-nationalist activists? The show weirdly shies away from calling them what they are sometimes. They are terrorists. I mean, the legitimacy of their cause aside, the way they enact their ideals is indistinguishable from any other terrorist group. They just bomb people a lot. The other villain in the show is basically just Nazi Captain America. Not that one, this one. They are actually an excellent basis for what is no doubt the one MCU tale closest to our real-world political struggles. And that's why it's so weird that exactly this story, doesn't take place in our world at all? Okay, look, here's what I mean by that. I actually recently learned how to define this at uni, believe it or not. Are you familiar with the term speculative fiction? Speculative fiction is all fiction which takes place on a world different from our own. And as the title already implies, speculates on what-if scenarios of differently structured societies. This can include fantasy and sci-fi. Applied to the MCU, we can clearly see that up until recently, it very much didn't fit into this category. Sure, things like Black Panther and Wakanda are undoubtedly speculative fiction in its own bubble, but considering the MCU's entire thing was always to pretend it to be our world, but add superheroes into it, it never really qualified as speculative. That is, until both our worlds were struck by two very different apocalyptic events. You see, most of the events we're currently watching in the MCU actually take place in 2023. That is, because 50% of the Earth's population disappeared for 5 years. And, well, our world is currently dealing with... you already know. So, for a piece of media to not address the current goings-on in our world and act as if it never happened automatically launches it into the realm of speculation. Adds to that the problems of the Marvel world simply are bound to be completely incomparable to ours, with just 4 billion people suddenly reappearing. That said, obviously, fiction that doesn't take place on a world similar to ours can still absolutely hold valuable political messages. I just feel like it's unnecessarily shady to hide the fact that the MCU just is fundamentally very different from our own Earth now. And the show does manage to say and portray plenty of interesting things throughout its run. First up, there's evil Captain America, who starts off as just another soldier trying to serve his country, only to be weaponized and exploited by America, used as a shield to deflect criticism, all the while disrespecting the legacy of that title, and the wishes of the former Captain America, John Walker... John Walker? What? John Walker, the new wielder of the shield, means well, but ultimately crumbles under the pressure of being this larger-than-life superhero superstar who needs to be terrifying to his enemies and comforting to the public. The reason he loses his title especially showing the cracks in the ideology of the people who sent him on his mission in the first place. As the Flag Smashers are anti-nationalist terrorists, it's on him to prove that he can keep America, and by extension the world, safe from them. But while Sam and Bucky try to reason with them to understand what it is they are after in the first place, Walker follows a seek and destroy strategy that repeatedly fails and gets his best friend killed. After this, he murders one of the Flag Smashers in public, cruelly beating him to a pulp with the Captain America shield. And look, this is a very impactful and symbolic scene, but it also reveals something much darker about the America in the show. And maybe in real life too. Who knows? Than the writers may have intended. Obviously, it is shocking imagery to have the Captain America shield soaked in blood. But Captain America, the original one, has killed plenty of people in his life. Sure, most of them were Nazis, but didn't he just shoot mind-controlled people in the Avengers? He just never explicitly killed someone with his shield. No, the reason the scene is so shocking is because it is Captain America and the state that employs him showing their cruel, fat bellies. It quite literally soaks the American flag in blood. It brings to light the blood that maybe was there all along. The blood that everyone, not only Americans, wants to forget. When he's consequently stripped from his title, Walker remarks in court that he was simply following orders. He did exactly what he was told. He worked exactly as intended. The people in the room with him had created him. It was never about right or wrong, about mistakes and accountability. It was about optics. Never more than that. A state-owned Captain America could have never worked. And that is simply because, maybe paradoxical to his own name, the character of Captain America has never been driven by patriotism. More than anything, he is fueled by what the American people aspire to be, by their core ideals that they hope to hold up. As such, even in the MCU, he revolted against what the government wanted a multitude of times. Which brings us to the Flag Smashers, and the problem with them. See, it turned out that during the 5 years where half of humanity disappeared, the world had come together somewhat in their combined grief and worked together remarkably well. So much so that nations and borders all but dissolved in their common goal of rebuilding the world. The Flag Smashers then believed that the world should stay this way. Their driving slogan, "One World, One People," is a simple phrase of unity and peace, and it explains why in the show they are portrayed as popular with a following all around the world. I also like that Marvel isn't retreading any ground here. You'd think the conflict the Flag Smashers face would be another story about overpopulation, but instead they're mostly at odds with the fictional organization GRC, supposedly dedicated to allocating and supporting the billions of people who suddenly reappeared in 2023. But, just like any supposedly well-meaning organization under capitalism, they are actually just mostly in it for the money! God. Okay. A bunch of rich assholes playing good Samaritans. Who would have thought? Anyway, the problem here is, as you probably have already guessed, that the Flag Smashers are right. Their entire goal is nothing but noble, and the way they mostly get around doing it is just by helping people in need. So why was I so adamantly calling them terrorists earlier? Well, in classic Marvel fashion, once a villain starts making too much sense, you just make him violent beyond any measure. Seemingly out of nowhere, after suffering no to minor setbacks, the leader of the Flag Smashers just decided to bomb and murder the shit out of anything in their way. And it's just weird. This not only makes the leader's constant and preachy speeches to both their followers and their enemies annoying and hypocritical, but also leads into a truly bizarre climax for the show, in which evil Captain America gets to redeem himself because he helped stop the Flag Smashers. Y'all hated this man a week ago, remember? Ugh. So anyway, the finale is about the Flag Smashers wanting to murder all of the CEOs of the GRC, or whatever, and the new Captain America and his friends, including Evil Cap, stop them. And this is where we get absolutely crazy, because the show does so many heel turns with its messaging that I'm about to fucking snap my neck! So, first off, Evil Cap is redeemed by fighting them in this episode. Isn't that literally the same thing he's been doing the whole time? Next up, Carly dies and is somehow portrayed as his martyr figure, with the symbolism of Captain America carrying her corpse literally making her look like an innocent fallen angel who didn't just totally try to murder tens of people. And at the same time, it's mentioned that her movement still has millions of followers all around the globe who empathize. So how can Cap be redeemed by fighting the terrorists, but their cause be justified at the same time? How is Carly Morgenthau this cruel monster and revolutionary at the same time? And yes, I know people can be both, but maybe they could have tried to hold back the murdering of random people a bit more to make it at least somewhat ambiguous. But all that still somehow works. Somewhat. The scene that completely pulled me out of the experience comes after all of this, because it is so incredibly outlandish, so fantastical in nature, and so completely tone-deaf in every single thing it's trying to say. So after Carly dies, the rich GRC guys are saved. Sam talks to one of them on live TV. He says that he empathizes with Carly's cause, and while she and the Flag Smashers went about it the wrong way, people need to question what makes these groups come together in the first place. What they want the world, especially the powerful people running it, to see. The billionaire rich guy gives canned stereotypical responses to Sam's monologue, including, "You don't understand," which he says twice. And Sam points out the higher wisdom he has gained on his journey to become the next Cap. That's all well and good. But then he asks the rich guy to use his powers for good, to do better, and believing in America doing better is all he can do. It is then heavily implied that, also because this is a talk on live TV, the politician rich guy is basically forced to change his ways. So am I the only one who is in complete awe at how insane that is? It is just bizarrely crazy. Like, what is this show trying to say with this? To keep raising your voices? Keep holding public figures accountable? Keep fighting for justice? That's all well and good. I do personally still have the hope that the BLM protests were good for something. But this entire notion that we can just talk to people in power and they will listen to us and become less cruel is just bonkers. I mean, do you really think that people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, who have had countless of interviews and TV appearances, will stop destroying the planet and treating their workers like slaves because a young girl died and someone asked them to be nice? Do you realize how outlandish that thought is? The entire problem of our world is that these people are impossible to reason with. They keep promising to usher in an era of prosperity, of peace, of sustainability, while bathing in the blood of millions and laughing in our face. And somehow, this Captain America TV show, even for just 1 second, tries to convince us that there's something we can do about it. Okay, that's all. The rest of the video is just a commercial for this ice cream. What? What? Oh, Sharon? Yeah, the Sharon thing is weird. I'm not gonna get into it, but like, you know, way to go painting all whistleblowers and American defectors as evil with the portrayal of Sharon Carter. Really adds to the complexity of that character. I sure hope it was worth it. I'm so tired of her. I don't like the actress. I guess we'll see her in Armor Wars, but I'm so tired of her.